Yes, good afternoon. Welcome to a Calvinian architecture Saturday afternoon in Mildura with all its attendant sounds in my front garden with my Chinese elm behind me shedding leaves right through the year, it seems, that my neighbour despairs over, but they do form a beautiful carpet everywhere you go. Today, 4th octave, 5th chapter, Leandra, verse 2 and 3. Verse 1 is my translation of Leandra, which is the Calvino invisible city, and verse 2, a journey, and verse 3, the story of something I wanted to buy somewhere to live in. These are all kind of dream-like sequences that I read, so they might very well feel like that to you as much as they feel like that to me. Verse 2. Throughout the 50s, migrants from Trieste would meet at the Legend Cafe in Burke Street. Here and only here could that particular dialect be heard, unmistakably Venetian, but with the mysterious presence of Greek, Slavic, and French, spoken in lilting tones that can be traced back to an Ottoman influence. On Saturday mornings, my parents would head straight there, laden down with shopping bags full of produce, wine, and olive oil from Victoria Market. Occasionally, I would be there with them. I would sit up at the bar, entranced by the 7 painted panels lining the wall behind the espresso machine, between the glasses and the brightly coloured bottles of almond and tangerine syrup. The paintings were entitled The 7 Voyages of Sinbad the Sailor. Arte moderna, the Triestine barman would sigh and explain with a smile to anyone who bothered to ponder them for longer than a few seconds, as though arte moderna was the ill that ate away at the core of the world. All of us had recently arrived in Melbourne after crossing the unimaginable distance that separates it from Trieste. Though I don't remember anyone acknowledging the paintings, most of us, I now suspect, empathise directly or indirectly with the imagery contained within each panel. The legend, as a result, became a meeting place for the lost Triestine sailors that we all were, secretly addressing our various inner selves as Sinbad. Our voyage to Melbourne could then rightfully take on epic proportions, even consequently imply an eventual return home, triumphant, joyous, final. We were indeed a minority within a minority. Late one evening many years ago, I suddenly asked my parents if they remember the legend and what it looked like, what it felt like. I can't remember a thing, says my father, except for those big paintings behind the bar. Do you remember those, Graziella? Yes, my mother replies. Especially the third one. It had the most intense patch of red in its bottom corner on the right side. She looks up in surprise at the power of her recall. Then they quietly go on doing parole incrociate, literally crosswords or crossword puzzles. I remember that my father has a book about Sinbad on his shelf. He'd borrowed it from the local Italian library. He'd been quite excited about the stories, though I can't remember why. I finally find it in a cardboard box. I go and sit near them and start reading. My father looks up, smiles, and continues with the puzzle. After a while he says, "This is the clue for 28 across. F or K, for instance, principals located in the office." In a puzzled tone, he slowly repeats the clue once more. "What?" they exclaim in unison, and then they look at me. I'm thinking of something else. I'm thinking of Leonard French's big glass ceiling in the Great Hall of the National Gallery of Victoria. I think of it as though it was an immense mirror, and suddenly that's what I most want to do right now. More than anything in the world, right now I want to lie on my back, on the floor, and look up at that ceiling that mirror, perhaps even fall asleep, who knows? On opening my eyes again, it would be the first thing I would see. 23 across, says my father insistently, it's not fair to have an attractive person around the house. My mother looks far away and smiles to herself. He looks at me and says, still reading about Sinbad? Have you come to the part where he's buried alive in the cavern of the dead under the Aegean? Now I remember that's the story that so excited him. Yes, I say, but he doesn't drown, he survives and goes on to other journeys. Puzzling, isn't it? He puts down his pen and takes off his glasses meaningfully. Well, of course he doesn't drown and survives. It's a story, isn't it? By the way, have you thought of what you'll do for the solstice in that big hall? I'm silent for a while. I pick up another book and begin to leaf through it at random. No, I say, I haven't. To cheer me, he pours me a glass of wine. Then he says, does it matter? I can't think of an answer to that. Instinctively, I look down at the book and I read the only entry on the last page. There is no need for you to leave the house. Stay at your table and listen. Don't even listen, just wait. Don't even wait, be completely quiet and alone. The world will offer itself to you unmasked. It can't do otherwise. In raptures, it will writhe before you. Drink, he now says, handing me the glass. It tastes different somehow, sour but sweet. At the same time, right at the point where the sweetness and sourness transmute into harmonious blandness, my mother says, enough drinking. Who's ready for the next clue? Verse 3. French Island, 42 acres, $42,000, views over Bass Strait, the Mornington Peninsula, Phillip Island, and the Prom. Scrubby, but the rest of the island's a national park. Now, oh yes, the ferry takes 12 cars. He finishes the sentence on an upward inflection. The ferry takes 12 cars? He's obviously very proud of the new ferry service. I make an appointment for the next working day, Tuesday being a holiday. Right, he says, see you there. I'm early as usual. I get the ferry over without waiting for him to call and go for a little drive. Something comes over me then as I pass the prison compound. Something in the trees, the air. Birds aren't singing either, and though it's a lovely late spring day, the island feels like it's got a cotton wool bandage all over it, tucked in under all its shawls. I see him. He's coming the other way now in the other ferry, the new one. I'm on the rickety one. We pass each other halfway. I know him from the car he's leaning on, all emblazoned with the agency's name. He's middle-aged. He looks a bit worried. I feel terrible that I won't be there when he arrives, but I've had to get off the island quickly. I don't know exactly why. I watch his ferry ploughing away towards the island. I can't do that again, I scold myself. I've got to make sure I know exactly what I want before I make another appointment. The coastline looks enormous from here, all the way down to Cape Schanck and up towards Merrick's, over there just across the water. God, so many possibilities, especially in Hastings. It's a little cheaper there because it has an industrial future. Well, that's what they were saying in the agent's office. That's right, isn't it? But do I set it up only so I can get away? I try and brush the thought away, but it stays insistently. Then, from whoever that thought arose, another emergence. You only want to feel the freedom of the single wave. Then, look below. There at the water, you're like each of those waves now lashing the prow of this old ferry. It itself knows nothing other than being washed anew by infinite numbers of single, never-to-be-repeated waves. After a pause, a single question arises. What will you be, wave or ferry? This question accompanies me until this very moment.